Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic Podcast. We've officially hit the final stretch of this top 100 countdown, and today's episode is really just all about the players sitting just outside the top 5, which obviously is our 10 through 6 range. This tier is absolutely stacked with just names that have defined our era and guys who just carry championship expectations every single year. And these are the guys who just dominate playoff series, the type of guys that can shape franchises and command the spotlight. And with that, let's get into it with number 10, Jalen Brunson from the New York Knicks. Now, this take was absolutely controversial for me, and as expected, the top 10 spot for me either went to Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, or Donovan Mitchell, but I ultimately went with Jalen Brunson, which kind of stemmed mostly from my first criteria section point, which revolved specifically around your aggregate value on both ends. And for Brunson, it was more scoped into the factor of how heavy of a load can you actually carry for a team, which for me, Brunson just ticks to a higher level than those other guys when it comes to the volume of offensive duties. Last year, Brunson averaged 26 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 assists on 55% effective field goal percentage for the third-seeded Knicks, who did win a comfortable 51 games. And last year, he also claimed Clutch Player of the Year, if that matters to anyone. All-NBA second-team honors as well for the second year and the obvious All-Star selection, which did carve out a very well-rounded year for Brunson. And when reviewing from the standpoint of just how good of a season Jalen is coming off, he gets pretty comfortable leeway in these player standings. So with Brunson, my faith starts with the half-court shot creation and the shot manufacturing piece. Not many guys in the NBA can handle the ball with the level of security as Brunson can, and not many guys can attain the level of individual shot quality in which he does. A 6'2" guard who attempts 33% of his looks in that short mid-range section is extremely encouraging, especially considering he makes 53% of them. And so basically the rim pressure piece is extremely strong, and with Brunson, he gets to the rim in an extremely matchup resilient sort of manner, which also just adds to the intrigue in his whole season-based value. Brunson has this immense superpower to be able to chain together agility-based counters in hyperspeed, just changing direction and pace with lightning explosiveness, which is ultimately backed by that strong frame that he delivers the power with. And much of this is obviously mobility-based, but the actual cognitive side of things with the angle selection, with the reaction speed, the backline anticipation, those are all what make everything he does with the downhill stuff so extremely consistent and continuous. And then also, to add to the intermediate and paint scoring, Brunson gives you truly plus pull-up shooting. Last year, a 44% pull-up jump shooter, which marked 4th out of 22 guys to attempt at least 500 pull-up jumpers last year. And with positive off-ball value as well to a degree, I mean, we're talking about a guy who was 98th percentile spot-up efficiency with a 42% catch-and-shoot 3 and an incredible closeout attacking angle selection piece. Just Brunson, he just offers you the absolute entire package of half-court value, just overcoming all of the athletic and height limitations that his build typically does present. Last year, other efficiency markers, he ranked in the 87th percentile for isolation scorers, he ranked in the 88th percentile for pick-and-roll scorers, and was 85th percentile for post-up scorers. And that is really just what makes him an incredible player as that pure on-ball prospect, and why he can carry substantial loads for deep playoff runs is just the versatility of his self-creation. Obviously, the passing isn't incredible, but it's certainly stable enough. Brunson can make the connective and movement initiating reads. He actually has basic vision enough to get by those tough defensive environments. And yes, the lack of over-the-top vision and size limits the distributing ceiling, but Jalen obviously just makes safe and high floor decisions for his team, which at least does uphold the overall value of his offensive impact. It's certainly not a limitation of his game. The drawbacks, though, do reside mostly in the athletic and defensive departments. Obviously, for Brunson, he's pretty non-vertical in every aspect, which does deprive him of any impact on the margins as a valuable cutter, rebounder, help side rotation defensive piece, but also just the lack of refined lateral movement defensively just adds to that inability to allow himself to stick with defenders easily. And due to the lack of size, I mean, Brunson naturally gets mismatch hunted very frequently. And this sort of advantage creation that he does give up is really where the limitations glare the most with Brunson and why many still hold him back in these conversations. And to be honest, I do totally understand. And defensively speaking, he is far worse than guys like Anthony Edwards, Spider, Jalen Williams, and even like Tyrese Halliburton. But for me, the individual load carrying just rivals the best guys in the league, and is why I do value his individual value so highly as one of the premier matchup resilient half-court shot creators in basketball, which is the most coveted playoff skill set that you can find. And for that fact, I have him bumping in my top 10 in the NBA for the first time in his career. Now, number 9, from the Houston Rockets now, I have Kevin Durant, who lands here. Someone remaining in our top 10 with the everlasting skill conditioning and the elite floor spacing value that he continues to bring year by year. Coming off an absolutely exceptional season once again, averaging 27 points, 6 rebounds and 4 assists on an incredible 60% effective field goal percentage. And that came to respective 53, 43, 84 splits to continue what has been an all-time elite efficiency standard that he has always held. Last year, KD gave Phoenix 1.16 points per possession out of isolation. That was good enough for 93rd percentile efficiency. He gave you 1.26 points per possession out of spot-ups as well, and that was good enough for the 92nd percentile. And he also gave you 1.11 points coming out of off-screen actions. And that basically emphasizes the floor gravity that he brings to the NBA. And in this league, I mean, he still stands as the most portable player in the league to me. Someone who gives you the most balanced and elite mix of on and off-ball scoring impact. And that is really why he ranks so highly here for me. Now, for people knocking KD on his team value just because of Phoenix's underwhelming results over the past year, what I'll say to you is that it's important to understand that KD was a plus 6 points per 100 possessions for Phoenix last year. And in the 62 games that he was available, Phoenix went 33-29, which is good enough for a 44-win pace, which obviously would have given a comfortable play-in seed for Phoenix. And obviously that's still not a great record by any standards, but the level of defensive talent surrounding that roster with the abysmal balance of two-way role guys just gave KD absolutely no chance of thriving in that environment, especially with how competitive the West was. In Houston, I just think we're going to really get one more representation of just how valuable KD is in this league, even at age 37 when the season does start as well, and just the sort of gravity that he brings as a 46% three-point shooter off the catch, and as by far the most efficient pull-up scorer in the NBA at over 49%. That stuff is going to be absolutely instrumental for Houston. And when you add in the insane over-the-top advantages, obviously, that he's provided his entire career, he just brings matchup to matchup resilience, and he becomes much harder to play even slightly off of, especially off ball, and that's when you get the entire gravity package with him. And it's his value that he brings to a floor balance and the all-time ceiling raising that still makes him a certified top 10 player in basketball and still a top 5 offensive impact weapon in the league. Obviously, the rim pressure and the efficient shot generation is the offensive drawback. Last year, he only attempted 13% of his looks at the rim, which, according to Cleaning the Glass, ranked in the first percentile for guys to be labeled as bigs. And it's really just it really stems from the lack of true weight distribution and physicality, the stuff that disallows any sort of dribble penetration at a high level. And that is the stuff that does restrict KD to purely selective rim attempts. And that is a major flaw for a top-tier offensive creator. And that is why he isn't the floor raiser of that other guys are. And that was on display in Phoenix. But regardless of that, I mean, splitting the value between floor and ceiling raising is hard, but the defensive versatility and the extra value that KD does give you does uphold this ceiling scaling aspect of him, and why I do favor him above other floor raisers like we just talked about with Jalen Brunson. Obviously, defensively, extremely rangy. He's built 6'11" with an extraordinary 7'5" wingspan with plus mobility traits relative to his size metrics. And that stuff does allow him to give you strong minutes roaming on the backline as a high-quality rim protector, whilst also being one of the highest quality switchers in the league at his position, especially with the swarming space coverage potential of his size and the lateral movement base that he already has, considering he is basically a 7-footer. And in isolation last year, I mean, KD held guys to just 0.76 points per possession, at -7% below their average field goal percentage at the rim. Just two factors that put him into elite status as a shot contester. And that is something that he has always been in, especially since his Golden State days. And this refined and mature version of KD certainly upholds that. And that does add to the overall impact that he brings to a team. And so when you are getting this super reliable help side defensive talent, just the room for error for your big man as well, and then we're going to see this in Houston, just becomes much larger, and they'll be immensely valuable next to Şengün, someone who does typically struggle with the footwork and the angle coverage when pressed up on the perimeter guarding action. And just having that extra assurance that KD comfortably offers on the backline just levels your defensive floor and enables guys like Amen Thompson to actually be on the perimeter consistently, not having to take these backline rim protection roles. And that I think KD will be absolutely perfect in. And so with Kevin Durant, I mean, he just gives you truly plus aggregate impact on both ends and truly versatile impact with that on and off ball dominance, with the schematic versatility that he gives everyone in the rotation, just with the floor space that he offers every possession. And that is the valuable ceiling raising trait. And in terms of just the individual impact just being so high, I mean, as the most portable asset in the league, I have to give KD a top 10 positioning this season at number 9. Now, next up at number 8, I have Anthony Davis from the Dallas Mavericks. Last year, Anthony Davis averaged 25 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists with 3.4 stocks per game on a relatively efficient 54% effective field goal percentage. And so basically to start the case for AD, it's really that he is still maybe the most balanced two-way force in the NBA in terms of providing equal impact on both ends of the floor, as still a destructive defensive anchor who, when keyed in, still has a certified top 3 defensive ceiling in basketball, in my opinion. And when reviewing these two-way anchors, I mean, last episode we hit on both Mobley and Victor Wembanyama. Just the overall value that they bring to a team is the package. I mean, all 3 of these guys aren't super high valuable offensive players, but amongst the 3, for me, Anthony Davis just provides that the most in that load carrying context. AD is definitely a player that can ship efficient half-court possessions at the highest level amongst those 3 guys, and that really stems from the boosted shot touch in that intermediate zone. But also, adding to that as well, when you talk about the extra physical imposition that he has, it's no wonder why he is substantially a better scorer and more reliable scorer than both Wembanyama and Mobley. AD, to this day, I mean, especially when healthy, is one of the best in the mobility aspect of things at his position. We're talking about the foot speed, the agility, considering his size. It's still extremely strong. And obviously, with the strength that he has built into his frame, he is now one of the most extremely credible 5 men in terms of guys that can battle and fight for optimal post positioning on the offensive end. And it's the ball handling too. I mean, that was exhibited quite a bit, especially with Dallas, and something that will continue to be exhibited in that stacked frontline environment in Dallas. But just the ball handling duties with AD as well, that's just another strong component that he brings offensively. And AD really isn't someone who can easily get knocked off balance. I mean, he's legitimately a high-level DHO initiator, just with the roll gravity, with the feel, the vertical timing that he has around the basket, but also just that ability to short roll and damage teams with that mid-range jumper or even those pop-out threes. And so basically, in terms of the actual play finishing arsenal, AD is extremely diversified as a big man. And that does add to both the versatility and the portability that he has in terms of the roles that he can cover for certain teams. And also to mention, he was top 5 in putback points and possessions per game as well. And with that ability to swim and beat other bigs 2 spots with that movement advantage that he does have. And he also ranks extremely high as a cutting option as well, which adds to his ability to milk the margins at a strong level. And that also adds to the entire portable package that he is giving you. So offensively, in terms of that ability to scale to different rosters and scenarios, he does rank very highly when we are considering anchors across the league. But defensively, we know that is really where he upholds the impact scale of things. AD is immensely versatile, strong frame, credible mobility, extremely intelligent when baiting those poor looks when caught on switches. His drop coverage as well just remains extremely coordinated as ever with the balance, the strength of absorption, the timing when playing the gaps. And in terms of defensive responsibility, we've seen AD man the ship in LA in absolutely dreadful defensive environments where he's needed to continuously make up for his point of attack shortcomings. And we are just 2 years removed from one of the most impressive defensive postseason runs that we've seen in recent history, from that 2023 Lakers conference finals run, where he utterly decimated the Grizzlies and the Warriors in multiple signature defensive performances, just simply highlighting just how much of the defensive load this guy can carry for a team still to this day. Obviously, the drawbacks begin with the health. But just to be clear, I mean, AD has played in 74% of regular season games over the past 3 years. And so for me, this argument is pretty much redundant. Obviously, last season, he was unable to suit up consistently, especially after the move to Dallas. But when basing off my criteria, AD loses more in the aspect that he simply couldn't put together an impressive campaign, rather than me lowering him in these standings due to the conditioning issues. I mean, I know he only suited up for 51 games, but he just wasn't able to put together one of those top tier regular season performances, which is part of my criteria is how good of a season you did have, and AD just didn't tick that box nearly enough. And that is why I do have him at 8, not higher. And obviously that's not his fault, of course, but we just didn't see anything of significance from Anthony Davis last year, especially when we are comparing him to the guys that I do have above him in this zone. And then also the aggregate efficiency part for AD, he's far from a high level efficiency sort of big. Obviously, for AD before, and when I was talking about the diversity of his scoring, I do credit the overall offensive and scoring versatility for his position, but that doesn't make him particularly efficient by any standards, especially for regular season considerations. Despite making 72% of his looks in the restricted area, which is around expectation as well. I mean, he was drilling 43% of his looks in the mid-range too. But besides that, AD shot just 44% in the paint non-restricted area, which is just something that, doesn't really give you much to be enthusiastic about. And then also beyond the arc as well, 28% from 3 last season, which split to just 30% on catch and shoot threes and 19% on pull-up threes off the dribble. And only 29% of his threes were made on those open to wide open threes too. And that really is just an abysmal mark, considering it being a decent portion of the value that he brings to the floor. And also, I mentioned the ball handling and the physical in position, but AD doesn't really utilize these gifts to be a strong playmaking big, as his offensive role kind of blends similar and even sometimes less broad than guys like Mobley and Wemby. Like, he doesn't provide the same playmaking value. He doesn't always provide the same off-ball value and off-ball gravity as a roll man and popper like what Mobley and Wemby can. And that is where you do deter some value from him. But above all else, I mean, AD is still a super and hyper-versatile big man with really strong on-ball capabilities for a big compared to his competition of those two-way anchors. And that is why I do value him so highly as a talent, and why I still have him strongly in my top 10 here at number 8. Now, one of the biggest debates I had to have with myself was between my 6 and 7 spots, and I actually had to shift them around some point last week, just splitting the absolute thinnest of hairs to decipher between these two extraordinary talents. And here in this 7 spot, I ultimately went with LeBron James. Last year, still a superstar production level. He averaged 24 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists on an extremely underrated 57% effective field goal percentage, which had respective splits of 51, 38, 78, as he came 6th for MVP. Also made All-NBA second team and All-Star in a season where I actually had LeBron making the first team All-NBA, purely because of the exceptional ceiling that he hit manning the front in LA in such a complicated team environment, especially due to the substantial roster changeover and the major identity shift that took place after the Luka AD trade. I just thought that was such an impressive feat from LeBron, considering being 40 years old. And that is why I did think he deserved an All-NBA first team placing. So when reviewing from the standpoint as well of how good of a season LeBron actually had, I mean, the Lakers just claiming the 3rd seed after those mid-season changes of that drastic nature, that already says enough about just how good and valuable LeBron still is. And one thing LeBron has ticked, which has been something to hold him back in all-time discussions, is the portability aspect. But when reviewing this current day version of LeBron in the modern day NBA, this fully skill-developed version of King James with the shot-making consistency just defines portability Just his ability to punish closeouts and space, now shooting 42% on catch and shoot threes, just adds to the overall impact that he's bringing to the NBA today. And I still can't knock him on value year by year. And that is why he still ranks here at number 7. For me, it's the off-ball value that makes LeBron this absolutely portable machine. He's a guy that does this not just on the shooting aspect, but he does this through being one of the most timely backline cutters and crashers the NBA's ever seen. And he adds this hyper-speed processing and decision-making as well as a ball mover with those bullet hockey passing as well, and the ability to actively extend advantages as well with the rim pressure that he can still spark at any given possession. Like, just adds to his ability to provide value as an off-ball player to the highest level considering his position in the NBA today. And it's really just a lack of consistent urging offensive intensity that does deprive LeBron of a higher rank. Because in terms of the actual capabilities, I mean, LeBron is so elite on both ends of the floor when he is keyed in with everything that is still elite frame and the cognitive superpower and everything that 20-year skill development can grant him on the NBA floor. Defensively as well, I mean, obviously I'm not going to sit here and act as if this is some top-tier all-defense level candidate, but truly LeBron is someone that can actually hit a defensive ceiling that enables him to be a mightily effective backline and help side piece. And that really stems from that cognitive superiority where the timing of his actual backline positioned help and advantage closing is just so fast for offenses to react to. Just the rebounding as well, another key piece of his game. And the ability just to end defensive possessions, that he gets 8 rebounds a game, like that is mighty value, where he can get the rebound and start the break and make those cross-court transition reads at still a top 3 level in basketball. And I know that does obviously feed back into the offense with that point, but truly LeBron as a defensive player, regardless of the motor, can still serve extremely strong as a true defensive captain. Someone capable of offering valuable roles as a wing piece, capable of providing resistant isolation coverage as well, just giving real backline minutes to absorbing contact, beating guys to their desired spots. And that is where the playoff version of LeBron can be extremely valuable overall. For me, LeBron, obviously, the motor and the intensity undercuts a ton of the defensive ceiling that I'm harping on right now, but we know this is mainly a result of being nearly 41 years old, obviously, still playing at a superstar offensive level. But obviously, the lack of motor does deny him that extra value to a large degree. And in terms of like the actual load carrying and the aggregate impact scale, yes, LeBron proved of that ceiling, but LeBron is just someone who just can't maintain that level of dominance for long enough periods of time to be a team's certified number 1 option for a contending basketball team. And that does reduce his stand on this list. And while I ultimately couldn't have him higher, even though his ceiling may actually be top 4 in the NBA. But overall, I mean, this guy has aged like absolute fine wine. I mean, he's still maintained the physical prowess that has granted him so much, and the cognitive supercomputer that he has continued to keep building with the experience and the IQ. And having that as your captain is absolutely invaluable and simply can't be replaced by anything in the league, especially when you are able to have that guy on the floor for 35 to 40 minutes a night in the biggest of matchups. And so for me, LeBron is clearly still a top 10 player in basketball, and I have him here at number 7 with no doubt in my mind he belongs in this tier as still a top tier superstar talent in this league. Now moving on to our last guy of the day, I have Steph Curry landing here, just a sniff out of the top 5 ranked, but absolutely still a top tier superstar in this league. Now a lot of you guys are probably thinking, I mean, how does Steph land this high after the continuous drop in production numbers over the past year? But for me, I mean, the impact is still mega high, and the ease of which to either slot him into any system or just fully build a top tier offense around him, it's just so simple. And I respect him so much still at this current form. And despite being 37, I mean, like LeBron, he has absolutely aged like fine wine and deserves this spot as he still delivers night to night greatness. Last year, Steph finished the season averaging 25, 4, and 6 on a super high level, 57% effective field goal percentage for a small guard, leading what was one of the top tier contenders out of the West by the time the playoffs arrived, which was majorly due to 2 things. Obviously, the Jimmy Butler insertion, just giving a substantial boost in raw talent and connective superpowers, but also just the mid-season resurgence from Steph Curry, which gave Golden State the absolute pinnacle ceiling that would have allowed them to give an extraordinary run against OKC if they were actually healthy enough to play them. And I think a healthy Steph Curry Warriors would have taken out that Minnesota Timberwolves squad. I just think the maturity of Steph Curry compared to Anthony Edwards as an offensive engine would have brought them a series win there. After the Jimmy Butler trade was made in early February, Steph went on to average 28 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists on 59% effective field goal percentage as the Warriors finished the regular season 22-7 with an invigorated Steph Curry. And this ceiling as well is what gives Steph massive leeway, obviously, but the floor raising that he gives you purely due to the raw value of his offensive slot into any system is why he is still so unbelievable and probably still a top 3 offensive player in basketball. He's still the best shooter in basketball in all forms. Elite off movement, elite on-ball creating out of isolation and pick and roll. Still an extraordinary spacer in transition and someone who still possesses elite value as a screener due to that scorching shooting prowess. And it's the off-ball playmaking that makes Steph invaluable to the highest degree. Similar to Jokic, the value of his off-ball movement just simply can't be replicated in any scenario. And just really for the Warriors, just having someone who can advantage create without the ball itself is the biggest luxury. But also just the volume in which he can create those open lanes, those open angles, opportunities for his guys is what has and still gives Golden State their championship level ceiling and why they believe they can still win a title justifyingly. And really just for the rarity of his skill set, I'm going to give Steph his absolute flowers here. And the value of his abilities are still absolutely top class. And there really is an argument even to have him as high as 4 or 5 in these play standings, especially when you are getting that primed version of Steph Curry in that aggressive mode of confidence and belief. Defensively, he obviously loses ground, but he doesn't lose anything substantial enough to bump him down very substantially. I mean, I've spoken about this, but there are guys who just aren't great defenders on the perimeter. But with a lot of those guys, I mean, there is certainly an avenue to build a cohesive defense around them. And then there are also just simply guys who just you can't trust really at all due to their either, awful physical limitations or their lack of true defensive understanding. But for Steph, I mean, he actually has proven the ability to match laterally at an above average level on the perimeter at some points, especially with that conditioned fitness that he still has. And then he also can still present as well strongly as a rotation piece, always on time, precise and sharp, cutting off quick advantages and flowing with the moving structure of a defense. And that does make him still viable on the point of attack even at age 37. And obviously the lack of high-level defensive impact by any means does deprive him of further impact and value, but it's nothing to substantially knock him down for in these rankings. Obviously, another drawback that people will point to is the lack of rim pressuring force that he doesn't really provide. I mean, especially in those slowed down half-court environments, just to the level of some of the other guys that I do have above him, he just can't provide the same physicality. And that does deter his consistency as an offensive creator and overall shot maker. And that just limits the easy advantages that he can put together. And just the guys that I do have above him just put more of a physical imprint on the game. But nevertheless, I mean, Steph is still a top-tier, absolutely elite, megastar value offensive weapon who upholds the defense enough to still have him here at number 6 based off last year's performance. And I'll always be a Steph believer in terms of the impact that he's bringing to the game at all times, even without live possession. And just this irreplaceable talent that he shows year by year, that just gives me enough belief to confidently sit him here at number 6 still, just sitting out of this top 5 zone. And so that wraps up my 10 through 6 range. And just to quickly recap, I had Jalen Brunson at number 10. I had Kevin Durant, number 9. Anthony Davis at number 8. LeBron James at number 7. And Steph Curry at number 6. And this group was full of just absolute legends and elite talents. And just players who have already shaped eras and are still playing at an incredibly high level. And players who we really just can't take for granted any longer, especially with KD, Steph, and LeBron, and to a degree, Anthony Davis. And my most exciting slot for this list was at number 9 and 10. I mean, compared to last year when I had a look at who I had last year previously in my top 100 rankings, I had to remove Kawhi and Embiid from my top 10, and that did pave the way for Jalen Brunson to be this substantial new addition. And after a conference finals run, I just believe Brunson has broken into this top 10 territory. And I was so excited to give him his props here. And then also KD on the other end was the other guy. I had him at number 11 last year. But with the decline of Kawhi and Embiid, it was an absolutely easy decision to bump him up naturally 2 spots with KD's continuous greatness and longevity. Now, next episode though, we move into the top 5, just the absolute apex of the league right now, and the guys who define championship windows for franchises completely. And make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss how I rank those guys, and let me know on Instagram at CasualNBAFanatic how you guys would rank these guys in that top 5 zone. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.